Hello, hello, and welcome. We're on our last leg here, the last week for our 5-week webinar series of Igniting Engagement Strategies for Motivating Employees. So we hope that you've been checking the prior sessions on YouTube and keeping looped into this really exciting topic and understanding how we work internally. What really sparks for us is as people in the workplace and how we can make a difference as managers, which is such a passion of mine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get us going. We're live streaming on YouTube, so I'm sure you got that pop up on your end if you're on Zoom, and we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road this chilly Friday. So hi, if you haven't met me, I'm Dr. Myra Austin. I'm the CEO and founder of Management Cues, and we're a unique management training company. We are backed by neuroscience and have had our programs scientifically tested. And all of that with the ultimate goal of understanding what managers' experiences are in the workplace, how we can equip them to be excited, to be motivated, to improve their own contribution, but also be happier, healthier, and really reach for that organizational excellence. So Management Cues is unique in that we design tools, we problem solve, we have various different training offerings, and we're looking to partner with managers out there. Again, we have a proven methodology with incredible results. You could check those out on YouTube too if you're curious. On our YouTube channel, we have shared our scientific public release with Neuron, our partner, who helps us in the neuroscience and neuroengineering space. Awesome. All right. So today our focus is going to be around building connections and the role that plays in designing and nurturing team dynamics. So what I've learned over the past 2 decades when it comes to team dynamics is one, it's incredibly important for managers to recognize that each team as it forms is in a stage. And so there are things that are normal and there are things that you need to guide those teams through. And so the best way to be able to do that and to really be of operational excellence is to understand and build connections with your team. And that can be difficult sometimes if you're extremely task oriented as a manager, or if you have a lot of pressure to achieve, or if you just simply haven't practiced building connections enough. And it can happen. We live in a very fast paced world. If you live in California, more so, it seems like everybody's burning out and working really hard in any given direction. And so I think it's important to take a back seat sometimes and assess whether we're building the appropriate connections with our team. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. So motivating team members starts with building genuine connections. So there has to be authenticity behind how you interact with people to really, really engage and connect. By tapping into the power of emotions, you can influence performance. So it starts with having that kind of awareness that emotional response is important and it does need to be understood for us to know how to interact, how to approach all situations. We're human beings, right? We're emotional beings. After all, our feelings are what drives us to take action. Typically, before we take an action, we're already feeling something. There's already something that is happening through neurochemicals in our brain. And so there is no coincidence is what I tell my managers when I'm training them on these types of areas or skill sets is there is no coincidences when it comes to responses. They're hardwired. And so for us to understand and be better managers, it begins with understanding how we're hardwired to respond. So this quote was really great. And when I came across it, I thought about how relevant it is to today's webinar. So I decided to go ahead and plug it in. And it's from Ettinger, this in 2022. And it says, in the research of our book, The Inspiring Leader, my co-authors and I analyzed a 360-degree survey data on 25,000 leaders. We discovered that those who were inspiring, the top 10% of the group, had something unique in common. their ability to establish a strong emotional connection with their employees. So again, back to our dialogue of it's not coincidence. There's a reason why the top percent has a unique contribution when it comes to making connections with others. And so that for us as managers, working with so many people, trying to get them to perform, trying to effectively communicate, there should be an emphasis on the importance behind communication and what people are going or are experiencing. So trust and psychological safety. Just had some great dialogue on a podcast with Dr. Anita Polite Wilson this weekend, and we were talking about psychological safety and what that looks like and how often the word is used, but do we really know what to do to engage it, to create it, to facilitate it, or to optimize it? So there are strong connections that ultimately foster trust, right? So it starts with the connection, then it becomes a trusting relationship between managers and team members. Employees feel safe when they are sharing ideas and asking for help. So if in your environment, team members are not doing that, that should be the red flag of, okay, we don't have enough trust here. We don't have enough of feeling of freedom to take these actions. And that should be a point of concern. And there should be steps that you take for that. You admit mistakes without fear of judgment. So you openly can admit mistakes, correct them, and try again. And the trust empowers employees to take the following steps: take risks and perform at their best. So a pain point that comes up with our clients and in my prior consulting experience has been where CEOs or owners or high level leaders are saying, we want to see our team step into leadership. We want to see our team take action and take some risk. Well, the reality is that if it's not happening, it has to do with trust and psychological safety. And the root cause as to why that's absent should be where the team starts. And so sometimes it's an absence of skill. Sometimes it's an absence of managerial courage. Sometimes it's negligence. Sometimes it's a lack of understanding of how connections should be taking place in the workplace. So those are all things that can speak to these areas. So increased engagement, how that relates to making connections is that genuine connections make employees feel seen and valued. And so one thing that we look at in the Management Cues programs is to heighten the sense of being seen and valued. So in our training programs, I particularly train our trainers to look out for specific characteristics, to look at behavioral aspects of how people are engaging, to ensure that they are actually physically being seen and that there's a presence of being valued, that they feel that way when they come to train with us. And so it does take a specific skill set, but it also takes self-awareness. Feeling seen and valued fosters emotional commitment. So the other thing that has come up in our scientific study actually is that a team of managers was committed to the program so much that they exceeded expectations by 100%, 200% sometimes 4 times over. And so the leadership team that they reported to had not seen that level of commitment in relation to their leadership. And so what that means is sometimes we have to look at ourselves as leaders and see why we're not fostering the level of commitment that we need. So employees are more motivated when their contributions matter and their efforts are recognized. So these things can be carefully designed from a management perspective. What comes to mind to me immediately is having a phenomenal HR partner that you can design something around, because the human resource contribution in this area complements what the manager needs of a team member when trying to establish these connections. So at Management Cues, we always encourage managers to get an understanding of what it means to partner strategically and effectively with your current HR leader, representative, or support team. The sense of belonging. So the sense of belonging is something that really intrinsically motivates. As I mentioned previously, we're emotional beings, but we're also social beings. We actually crave connection. So feeling connected to peers and leaders reduces isolation and increases collaboration. A strong team dynamic motivates individuals to work towards shared goals rather than focusing solely on individual successes. So, that team dynamic that we're looking for, where the team sees themselves as a single unit, where they see one team member's loss as the team's loss and the wins in the same way, that type of connection is really hard to beat. The performance around that type of solidarity is 10 times over, right? Because everybody's bought in, everybody's committed, and they're connected, right? And so, as a manager, that should be our goal in terms of igniting motivation, is to see how we can get the team to cohesively connect, right? And I think we see it with sports teams. And when a team is disconnected and when a team is connected and they're on the same beat, you can see it. They're winning from the beginning because they're in sync, right? So understanding individual drivers as you're looking to connect with people, it helps to understand each person and what they're motivated by. That also helps you identify what the group's majority motivator is made up of, right? Is the majority of the group intrinsically motivated? Is the majority of the group extrinsically motivated? And how can we design something that accommodates the majority of the group without leaving out, the distinct individual contributors that may be a little different? Motivators may include growth opportunities, recognition, work-life balance. Tailoring motivation to individual needs can look like demonstrating that you care and driving higher performance, so that those outcomes at the end of the day align with organizationally the kind of dynamic that you need. Inspiring loyalty. So loyalty is like trust, right? It's something that you can't buy. And so connected employees are less likely to disengage or leave. Strong relationships encourage employees to go that extra mile. So that extra push of going above and beyond, staying late, completing the project, that extra push that really kind of sometimes makes us propel forward, comes from feeling connected to what is happening and what we're doing. Relational investment fosters loyalty and commitment. And that's what gets companies through sometimes, especially during hard times, when there's a high level of loyalty. Boosted emotional energy. So positive connections release feel-good hormones like oxytocin. And in our prior session, we talked about oxytocin being the trust chemical, right? And so it's related also to that feeling of connectedness. Oxytocin reduces stress and increases emotional energy. Have you ever been or had a friend that every time you meet with them, you just feel like your cup is full again? Like you feel refreshed. You feel like for some reason they took some sort of weight off your shoulders. That's oxytocin, right? Being released as you're having the conversation, having the cup of coffee, maybe eating your favorite food. This emotional lift motivates people to overcome challenges and maintain momentum. I know for sure that when I feel this type of emotional energy, this boost, I feel like I can take on the world right after because I feel like some part of me got regenerated. So it is really powerful and it is an incredible motivator to have that type of connection. So what I often hear out there on both sides of the coin, whether it's on the side of the organizational behavior, professional area, or from the CEO, owner, or decision maker area on the opposite end, is how do we measure this, right? How do we make this relevant to leadership? How do we make this relevant to managers and day-to-day exchanges? These are common areas that I like to break down for people because it can all be measured, and you can create and develop a lens for these things that that push human performance, trigger motivation, right? But still have a way to measure it back, link it back to the bottom line, or areas that require more specific financial decision making, resource allocation, right? So here are some of the ways that you can measure connectedness. So employee engagement survey scores speak to connectedness. Pulse surveys, if you do pulse surveys as to what the connection is like in your environment, and you design and format questions around that objective, you can get it that way. The rate of innovation. So the rate of innovation I mentioned recently in a podcast with Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, because it's something that measures how many new ideas are coming to the table. And if you're tracking that, that is a direct indicator of trust, psychological safety, and connectedness to what's happening. If you have zero new ideas coming to the table, people aren't sharing and it's for a reason, or people are afraid to and it's for a reason. So it's looking at data in a different way. The voluntary turnover rate, if people are just not happy in the environment, there's not going to be trust, there's not going to be any space for any of that, because they're simply not enjoying themselves there. Employee retention rate, how are you retaining employees? The exit interviews. So when I manage in the workplace, I always standardize exit interviews, because the feedback from those interviews is priceless. And you start to see where things bucket, where things group. And that's typically an indicator that there's something that needs to be done, or something that's not quite aligned. And sometimes it's small changes, sometimes it's a whole culture shift that needs to happen. Cross-team project participation. I train our managers and managers that have worked with me to look at what participation looks like in the groups that they're leading, because if you're paying attention, you start to see that it's not just because people are quiet. It's not just because part of the group is an introvert and the other part's an extrovert. There's a little bit more behind the story if you're paying attention, and ultimately it does impact performance. How are people engaging with collaborative tools, right? What are the usage rates for the tools, the widgets, the apps that you're using? Excellent way to collaborate with your IT leader and figure out what it looks like, what participation looks like from that front, right? It's completely data driven. One-on-one meeting frequency and quality, right? It's not just having the meeting, but is it working? Is it actually delivering some sort of quality to the people that are involved, whether it's the manager or the team member? Are they getting a benefit out of it? And that should be a question you should ask, at the end of each meeting. Is this benefiting you? And, ultimately you want to create that connectedness that will have people be honest with you. The employee NPS, the Net Promoter Score, is another great one for managers or teams. Team communication clarity scores on surveys. So if you're not conducting surveys as to whether things are working, you're just conducting surveys around how people are feeling, it might not be well-rounded enough. So consider including that. Peer-to-peer recognition frequency, measuring that. If the people that work with each other, how they view performance, can be an indicator of other challenges, or that it's going great and that they work great together. Recognition programs, participation metrics. If people don't want to participate in your recognition program, it's not working. And if you're not measuring recognition program effectiveness, there's no point in having it. It's just it's a resource where there's finances allocated to it, but there's no real return on investment there. So it's really worth figuring out and tracking. And inclusion and belonging survey results. So part of feeling connected is feeling like you belong there and like you're a part of it. And so having survey questions that ask questions around that dynamic is important as well. There's no other way. We either feel like we belong or we don't. And most of the time it's pretty clear. And getting that information could be extremely valuable and be very much linked to your team dynamics. So, ways that managers can strengthen bonds. So, here's what you can do as a manager. And these I have practiced for a very long time and have probably gotten them down to a science, but hold regular individual meetings. One thing that I like to do is I custom create agendas that fit what is happening, and I make sure at the end that I'm always asking, is this of benefit or does this feel like a waste of time? And obviously it has to be in a very non-threatening way that you ask these questions to get people to be honest. But I include others in decision making. Ask for feedback about your management style. So it's important to ask people what they think about how you manage, and then adjust with the feedback. Apply feedback where appropriate. Make time for small talk. Find out how people are doing. Are things affecting them in different ways? Just really get to know what's happening in their day. Be transparent. Be honest. Act on feedback, acknowledge team members, and be intentional. Be thoughtful about your interactions with people. As managers, we have influence, we have authority, we have all these things that actually have an impact on people's lives and how they respond to things. So these are some common mistakes that managers make that actually do the opposite of creating connectedness. It actually alienates people. So leading with a know-it-all approach, micromanaging, jumping to conclusions, playing favorites, not being engaged, not valuing development or training, delivering judgmental feedback, interrupting team members when they're speaking, not believing in team members, undermining team member opinions or ideas, lacking self-awareness, and not including team members in decision-making. So these are some of the things that really push people away. And in the process, breaks down trust, makes it feel like it's not safe, right? It makes it feel like it's an adversarial type of relationship. And so if you're not aware and some of these things you do, that's what you want to start working on to enable connectedness and trust, because that's when people really make a difference and show up in a very different way. So we are hardwired to connect with others. It's what gives purpose and meaning in our lives. And without it, there is suffering. So I love this quote from Brené Brown, and she's a professor, an author, and a podcaster who studies courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. And so what I think is so powerful about this quote is that I have worked in my experience in environments that were so toxic, they hurt, right? And I've been working for a long time. And I've worked in environments where I felt energized as soon as I got there, because I was working with such wonderful, good, hardworking, caring people. And being a leader felt great in those environments, because we were there to do something together, and that felt great, right? That feeling of connectedness. And in the dysfunctional environments, it was a mission to restructure and re-engage and try to make a difference. But ultimately, the leadership teams, the management teams were the ones who were dictating the direction that we were moving in and what we wanted to accomplish. So it's important to remember that we make up that dynamic, and we have more power than we think as managers to influence culture and to change those types of feelings around trustedness, psychological safety, and connectedness. Okay, so I'm going to check and see if we have any questions. Give me a second and check on YouTube just to see if we have anything on here. And I think we're okay. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close it out. Thank you for joining me for this last session. I hope these tidbits have been helpful. It's definitely short and sweet and to the point. So as we stated, Management Cues does things a little bit differently. We provide training and support through a variety of channels because we believe in providing this type of experiential type of training and making it accessible for everybody and at various all really price points. And so if you registered for this webinar, you'll get a copy of the webinar deck. Training programs are available for you to check out online at www.managementkeys.org. And you can always check out our management planner. This management planner was designed with the functions of management and leadership in mind, and really walking through how to run your day as a manager and think with more intention. So I designed this along with some professionals, colleagues of mine. And so check it out. It's super easy to use and very practical. And so you definitely get your money's worth there. We also have a strategic management collection, which outlines several different tools that managers can use day to day as they're interacting with their staff and leveling up their connectedness with their teams to ultimately just be of higher impact in the workplace. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you joining our webinar, sending us your questions. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out at info@managementkeys.org, and we'll see you on our future series. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.